With the recent changes to the TFT meta following the new patch updates, Predators has seen a few changes, with a few solid buffs to go along with a couple of minor nerfs. So in this video, we'll be going over all of those updates to show you where the new power level of this build lies going forward. Luden's Echo got a slight rework, as well as a pretty solid buff to Kog'Maw's spell at all 3 levels, and we'll cover all of those, as well as a buff to Static Shiv that comes in at the later part of this build. But first, I'd like to remind you to click on the link below and take a look at the updated ProGuides.com. If you want to learn more about teamfight tactics, ProGuides will always have info on the newest patches, best builds, and strategies. There are all kinds of different resources available from top players to help you be the best player that you can be, including access to coaching, so make sure to check out ProGuides.com using the link in the description underneath this video. The general game plan that we'll be sticking to with hyper-roll Preds is to burn down our gold in the early game around the Crumbz jungle camp, aiming to hit our mid-game build with at least all 2 stars and ideally even 1 or 2 3-star units. This gives an already very strong Predator synergy enough extra stats to sustain all the way through the mid-game, while win streaking and building back up our gold economy to power level through to the late game. To note first here, this game plan works best when other players in the lobby aren't doing the same thing, so it's critical to scout early and often through all the early rounds before the first jungle camp at Crumbz to give yourself the best odds of success. The main focus of the strategy is hitting 1-cost units as 3 stars to give yourself a big power spike very early on, and then to stabilize your economy after that, playing off of those few strong units. In set 1, this was very popular also when the game first came out, although that was partially because drop rate chances were different and more in favor of finding 1-cost units. But the same strategy still applies, and it's remained pretty popular and very effective. The main reason it's popular is due to the ease of playing it. You don't have to worry too much about early game and mid game economy, or transitions rotating units in and out when your focus is on rolling for upgrades. It's also quite effective because 1-cost and 2-cost units that are 3-starred early in the game have a lot of hit points and do good damage. It also means that you'll be strong enough to have only 5 or 6 units out on your board and still win against someone with 6 or 7 units on their board. What makes Predators such a good choice with this strategy is that they also have an execute as their passive trait, so having more hit points means your opponents live long enough to get the enemies down below that 25% execute cutoff. In the early game, we want to spend as little gold as possible while rolling at safe breakpoints between gold interest levels, and it's alright to try and hit pairs for 2 stars. Remember again to scout the lobby, and at this point you'll have to decide if this is a strategy that you do want to commit to. At Crumbz, if all is going well, don't level to 5. Ensure that your lineup is strong enough to beat the camp, so do what you need to do there, but ideally stay at level 4. This keeps the odds of finding those low 1-cost and 2-cost units the highest while you've got a maximum amount of gold, and it's also the point where other players have moved up in levels and are unlikely to be competing to buy the same units as us. So at round 3.1, roll down hard. Grab every Predator that you can and work fast. If it's your first time with this strategy, it might take you through the entire combat round, but if you've been practicing for a while, you should be able to get this done and have all your units upgraded before the fighting begins. The early game build here will be no surprises really. It's all 4 Predators plus at level 5, another strong unit that fits with 1 extra bonus synergy. Typical options here are Nocturne for steal or Ezreal for the glacial stun. Ezreal has more consistency at 1 star, and stuns are pretty huge in the early game, especially with the Predators execute in play. Nocturne will be part of our endgame, so do pick him up, but overall he's a bit weaker than Ezreal on the board at level 5. Items for this build have seen some recent changes, with Luden's Echo getting a rebalance across all levels, 25 points more splash damage at 1 star, and 25 less points at 3 star, though since it will be Kog'Maw holding 1 or 2 Ludens in this build, let's take a look at the changes to Kog. Kog's spell damage in patch 10.3 got boosted 25 points at early levels and 75 points at 3 star to 150, 300, and 500 respectively across the levels. This is a very solid increase that will see the mid-game Predators build stomping on opponents and win streaking all the way through to late game. An already powerful team comp centered around a Kog carry that can often get to 3 star very early is a very strong goal to aim towards, and you'll literally be spitting out crazy damage with a completed item or 2. For other items, we'll be working towards an Ashe with Static Shiv, so make sure to grab the pieces for that as well. Basically, just remember to always grab a mana tier if you see one. After tier, AP rods and attack speed bows are next on the list. Another reason why I like Ezreal so much in this build at level 5 is that he's a fantastic holder of all of these items, and he can also be sold off no problem later to rotate the items out for Ashe. The full build comes online fairly late in the game, since after spending so much gold early, it'll take a little while to get your income levels back up, and to power level through mid game to level 7 or 8. The back half of this build features some expensive 4-cost and 5-cost units that are more commonly found at level 8, So again, make sure to focus on keeping that income level high enough to get through to the late game, and the early power of Predators should be more than enough to carry you there. The late game part of this build will see Nocturne and Ashe come in by level 7, and Warwick or Ezreal will rotate out for Twitch when you're able to find him. The other will be rotating out for Singed to give the next significant boost in power at 3 poison units. This is effectively a defensive power spike for us as opposed to an offensive one, since we'll be using it to shut down enemy threats and delaying their mana regeneration. However, if you can put together a Morellos to give to Singed at this point in the game, he also becomes a pretty significant threat as a damage dealer as well. Finally, Taric comes in last to complete the crystal set in this build, giving us 3 crystal units total. Remember that crystal is a defensive bonus that limits the amount of damage these units can take from any one hit. This will keep your Taric and Ashe alive for much longer, letting her pump out more damage with Static Shiv, and Taric alive to protect the rest of the team with his ultimate spell as well. In total for this build, we'll have a very well-rounded set of synergies: 3 Preds, 3 Poison, 3 Crystal, 2 Steel, and even 2 Rangers for some extra attack speed. This very lethal comp is very fun to play and has some pretty consistent top 4s, but sometimes finding the late game units can be a little bit tricky later on. Overall, it's quite powerful, and win streaking through the mid game is common, with the execute damage on Preds being very significant and effectively meaning that all opponents have 25% less health. With spatulas recently removed from the carousel rounds, this build might be contested a bit more now, as other spatula dependent builds have become much less of an option. However, this isn't the only strong early game path, as Woodlands and others have recently gotten a boost in power also. Weak matchups for hyper role Preds are Berserkers who have high enough health pools and damage outputs to beat us down before getting hit with execute damage, and Summoner comps who can Zerg rush our units from all sides. Strong matchups are Mages who are very squishy early and are countered by our Poison later on, and Infernos for much of the same reasons. Overall, this strategy takes a little bit of practice to get right with the timing around when to roll down, but it is very strong, and it all but guarantees consistent top 4 placements. Try this one out for yourself and let us know your results in the comments below. And make sure to check back right here on the ProGuides.com Teamfight Tactics channel, the newest TFT guides. Make sure to like and subscribe here on YouTube, and use the link below to head on over to ProGuides.com, where you can find tons of great resources from top players to help you be the best player that you can be, including access to coaching. So make sure to check out ProGuides.com using the link underneath this video. Again, I'm Vincent Grand. Cheers, and we'll see you next time.